Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And our focus today is on the resource management workspace. But overall, what we're really going to talk to you about is resource management as a practice using strategic portfolio management. My name's Mark Casto. I am a product excellence director for the strategic portfolio management. And I'm joined by my friend and coworker, Josh. Josh, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. As Mark said, I'm a peer and been working in the project management kind of space for quite some time. And I really have a passion for these products. So hopefully that shows through in our presentation today. Really excited to kick this off. It's just one of four. So, Mark, back
Yep.
over to you.
Thanks, Josh. So we will probably talk about a couple of new features, functionalities. So we have to present this safe harbor notice for forward-looking statements. We are giving you our best knowledge of what's coming, but we don't want you to make purchase or commitments based off of these statements as things change. And so we have to let you know that, we're giving you the best that we know at this time and our, we're here to help, but we can't always control what comes out as a product. Sometimes things get delayed, etc. So, as Josh mentioned, this is actually the first in a series of four workshops that we're going to hold. Today, we're talking about resource management in general, getting across the key concepts, and then we're going to focus on resource management workspace. In July, we're doing general resource management end to end. So how do you do resource management? What are the personas? We're digging deeper into the process. In August, we're going to cover capacity planning and assignment capabilities. So taking on another aspect of this resource management. And then finally in September, we're going to host what we call an office hour. So there you can bring your questions. People will be able to talk live. We're going to present the roadmap. That one won't be recorded because people get to talk. But bring your questions, find out more. If you're giving it a try, you want to do a proof of concept or something like that, it's a great place to come and ask questions. So that's our series of four. To register, here's a QR code. I'll leave it up here for a few seconds for people to get it. You can always go to the ServiceNow community, go to the Strategic Portfolio Management Forum, bookmark it if you don't have it already, because there's a ton of great information there. This is where the community communicates and we grow. It's where Josh and myself and our peer um, Luis, we publish articles all the time on how to do stuff, as well as the rest of the product managers. There are some great Kickstart guides out there. So don't forget about ServiceNow community. So on with the show, a little bit of housekeeping. We've got a little bit of time, about 10, 15 minutes saved at the end where we'll do just formally do Q&A. If you have questions, if you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A button. Click that, put your questions in there, and then we have a whole team of people from the product team, and also from our team who are going to help answer your questions as we're doing the presentation. As we said, it's recorded, it's going to be shared on the community. And after the event, we'd really appreciate it if you'd fill out a short survey that we're going to send. Let us know how we did. Let us know what you want to see, those sort of things. We appreciate your feedback. So, high order agenda, first section, we're going to talk about resource management in ServiceNow as a practice. What are the key concepts that you need to know? And we're doing this. Some of you may be deeply familiar, some of you, this may be brand new. We want to make sure everybody has a good foundation so the resource management workspace part will make sense. And we're building layers here. So the next presentation session that we do next month, we're going to build on these concepts. So we're giving you a foundation. We're going to talk about the key tool in the whole thing. We're going to do a demo. We'll watch our time. Could be shorter, could be longer, but we're going to do an end-to-end demo of a requester, like a project manager, setting up a couple of resources, and then putting on the resource management hat and approving and managing those resource requests. Finally, we'll have Q&A and then a section on resources to learn more, grow more. And off we go. So we did not set up our poll, Josh. I've got a poll here if you would, if you want to put it in chat or in the Q&A. We want to know, have you implemented or are you implementing resource management? And what are you using? Are you using the original resource management, using resource plans in ServiceNow? Are you using our new resource assignment or other tools such as Excel, or you're not implementing? We'd appreciate your feedback. We had a little bit of a miss here. And I think I see a ton of people letting us know. Thank you so much. I'm going to give it a few minutes. You guys are really being so kind. We appreciate it. Seeing a lot of A's, some B's, A and C,
A's to B's, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
A, B, C's, not many D's. So this is good stuff. All right, slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, there's an E, middle of our implementation. So fantastic, Andrew. Thank you.
Like it.
All right. You can keep responding. I'm going to move on so that we have enough time. Resource management and ServiceNow. Josh, can you tell us about it? Give us that overview of how it works.
Absolutely. And as Mark stated, we're really going to focus on the practice of resource management, even though it is a product, that it all starts with the practice and the processes. We kind of have a joke on our team that 90% of everything we do is about the process. The platform just helps us enable those, right? Whether it's a joke or truth, debatable, but it is definitely where we need to start. So as we look at the first we need to define things, right? We have work to do. We need to find people to do it. If we don't have definition and what we're looking at needing to do, how can we actually start to execute? You can't. So it all starts with defining it. Then we need to manage, and this is managed from an actual resource or people perspective. What's our availability? What's our schedules? All those things that need to be set up, right? So we have the data available to us and the proper attributes to move forward with forecasting. And this is the demand of our folks, assigning the appropriate resources for the right things at the right time, and then finally assign. And that's a redundant statement, but it's the next step. We forecast and then we actually finalize, right? That's the assignment. So this is your kind of overview, a bit of on the highlights. Really, the major thing is built on the next experience. So when we think about resource management as a product, this is where we're focusing. Migration, we have to make sure that we have clear path to move to the new. So that is actually out there. We'll have resources available to you. One of the things that we will talk about in a future session is around that. We won't get in fully. There's plenty of materials out there, so we'll make sure that you're enabled. And then integration with Planning Workspace and Project Workspace. This is a big one because from a legacy or classic resource management perspective, there's hindrance in these two areas. We just can't really accommodate it, right? So moving into the new resource management workspace will allow us to actually take advantage of the full suite of new products. And then integration with the scenario planning. This is something that is future looking. We don't have necessarily a timeline yet, but that is part of what we are making come to fruition within the strategic planning workspace. So one of the major things is determining the methodology. We've kind of narrowed it down to four. The first one being highly centralized. So we look at all I do is I have a work item as a project or a product manager. The resource managers, they take it from there. I don't even submit a request or a high level. It's literally here's the work items, and I have a wholly separate team of centralized resource managers to work on that. That's I would say an edge case. This is more what we're seeing is I'm going to create a work item as a product or program manager, and I'm going to give some semblance of what is necessary for these resources, the attributes, and then we'll be talking about attributes here in depth quite a bit. And then the resource managers take it and they staff it, right, based on those attributes necessary. When we move into a hybrid model, we're really looking at I kind of know who I want, so I'm going to actually name resources as a product or a project manager. So I'm going to give the resource managers kind of a step. It doesn't necessarily mean the resource manager is going to say, yeah, no problem. But it's at least giving us a little bit more direction on who. And then finally, decentralized. We see this a lot with customers that really operate autonomously as a individual team, and there's not much overlap. What I would say from the larger resource pool, right? It's really freedom within the system, and it gives them the ability to operate in that autonomous. The challenges are when you do have impact across, this can be very, very siloed so that we don't actually plan the resources appropriately. So we've seen a lot of customers that were necessarily decentralized move into that more of a hybrid model so that we have better oversight in the bigger picture of things going on. As we move into the foundation, we say the key terms, SPW or Strategic Planning Workspace. That's where we're going to leverage our capacity planning future session here. And also we're looking at demands and epics. Kind of gives us an ability to do it in a holistic view. Our project workspace is where our project managers mostly live. We'll have personas defined here in just a few moments. And that's where they would be working on the resource assignments. And then finally, the resource management workspace is for our resource managers and that centralized methodology. So I may be working in both project workspace and resource management workspace, depending on, we'll call it the hat that I'm putting on. And you'll see that in our demo later. I have a scenario set up for each one of those three methodologies. The highly centralized one is we're not going to talk about from a demo perspective. But you'll see me going back and forth between those two workspaces. When we talk about planning attributes, these are essentially what we need to define the resources that are necessary, right? So we have groups, roles, and skills those are apparent in our classic as well. When we move into this new world, we have more of the primary group, role, and skill. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. There are the ability to add additional planning attributes. Cost centers is actually a pretty common one. The location, definitely the most common that we have, but we've seen others with customers as well. Our resource status is simply that, the status of our resource assignment. And our effort type, again, also in the classic is our FTE or full-time equivalent, or by hours or by person days. And then in-flight assignment is basically something that's already kicked off and I have actuals against it. So there are subtleties that you cannot do certain things when I have an in-flight assignment that I can say I don't have actuals on something. And we'll dig into that in our next session when we get really deep into the enablement of those processes with our products. So moving from key terms, we go into the key concepts. The first three are users, our groups, and our roles. Right? The user is defined as a resource user in the ServiceNow platform, any user that contains the PPS resource role. Plain and simple. If I do not have that, I am not applicable within resource management. Those users have primary resource groups and primary resource roles. So moving from we'll call it the classic, not necessarily old way, but there's definitely been a challenge when we're trying to define capacity and it being able to be clear. So by introducing these primary attributes, we're able to say definitively these that have a primary attribute of X group or X role, this is the capacity. Moving into the resource schedules, we have the ability to define the next layer, which is the capacity and availability, based on those schedules. And you can create them based on location. So there's different holiday schedules, things like that. That is definitely tailored to your organization, the way you see fit. But we do also have default ones, and we'll show that in a little bit of a diagram here in the next slide. Our capacity is derived from our schedule. If I have X amount of time, that is my capacity. It can flex based on time off, but primarily capacity is stagnant, right? Does not change. Your allocations will be what you are booked or assigned to from a resourcing perspective, not from a task perspective, but from a resourcing perspective. And that will actually decrement your availability. So availability equals your capacity minus the allocations. So allocations and availability, variable. Capacity, think of it as more static. And then your aggregates is really just the records or roll up for those different capacity allocations and availability. We all have both monthly and weekly, and those come into play because they're based off of the reporting and some of the workspaces that we have. So this is just a quick little association of capacity, availability, and allocation. Think of the default schedule of 8 hours per day, 5 days a week equals 40 hours of capacity. So with no allocations, my availability equals my capacity. But once I get a resource assignment, then if it's 20 hours a week for 6 months, that'll decrement my availability and provide me with allocations. Simple as that, but it is a common challenge for folks because capacity, availability, and it's definitely a simplified version of what you're going to be seeing in your environment, right? So I wanted to make sure that we address that. Moving from there, we have our process flow. So when we think about where does this start, we want to provide a simple, right? So a resource requester creates a resource assignment with a named resource. That is our hybrid. It goes directly to pending. When I don't have a named resource, it becomes an unassigned. That's based on our attributes, right? So we can see that dotted line kind of gives then the role or responsibility for our resource managers. If we have an unassigned, we need to assign those resources. That moves to pending. And then it either goes from pending to approved, or we move to unapproved if the assignment is rejected. Even the named resources, right? As you said earlier, you can't have that person. So I'm going to unapprove this. And what that leads to is a little bit of updates and making changes. So it goes kind of back to that resource requester to make those changes and resubmit. Kind of goes through. As we stated, the planning attributes, the group roles and skills, those are our out of box, we'll call them, available to you day one. And locations is a very, very, very common one to be added. So we bring it up here because our groups live in different worlds, right? So the pools of resources that you want to create, it's made to define your work. And if you have challenges like many customers do, hopefully this will help to simplify it for you. And number two is probably the biggest point to drive home here. If we do not have the user data, we cannot support regardless of what you're trying to do, right? So the attributes that define resource management users needs to be somewhere. I've run into circumstances where they want to do it this way, but they don't have locations, or they don't have departments, or they don't have certain data elements. We can't just flip a switch, right, to make that happen. So that's where we need to start with the process and defining these for your organization. From there, excuse me, we can build the data points. And if we look at these as a simple diagram here, the dark circles are groups, the lighter circles are our roles, right? So this is to this is to show that we have a pool of roles. That doesn't mean that we are going to be requesting those specific people just by defining a single attribute. What this does is it allows us to more talk about a combining of attributes and think of these as and statements. These are not or statements. So again, along with the classic resource management, we had the same types of scenarios where I would select a group that would give me a certain pool, or I would select a role that would give me a different pool. But if I combine them together, you can see that it is an overlap. It is not an or statement, meaning give me all of the people in group HR benefits and role project manager. It's just the ones that are and both. So it's an and statement. And this narrows down the pool of resources for us to get to the right people for the right reasons. Location is another one to throw in here to just say the people supporting EMEA cannot necessarily fulfill the things that the US needs to do because of timeframes or regulations or whatever the case may be. So that allows us to narrow it down further, even though they may be part of the same group and have the same role. Finally, again, the kind of key considerations here, we need to have a primary group or role and or skill to avoid double counting of capacity, right? Users can still be a member of more than one, but right now we have that primary attribute to define, so we have capacity. And Resource Management Workspace, from that perspective, also leverages the primary to get the pool of people that we need to be looking at. Now, we are looking at solutions that will allow kind of split capacity, 50-50 for roles or whatever the case may be to get down there. But right now, this is kind of where we're at. So forward looking, this is going to evolve a bit more. The last bullet here, custom planning. Sorry about that, Mark.
Sorry.
The custom planning attribute, again, user or employee profile record. The reason is whether you can't just hop 15 times to get to the right data element. So you need to consider that while you are kind of planning your attributes and where they live and what they're going to demonstrate for your users. Sorry, go ahead. So really quickly, different personas, the work owner, demand managers, project managers, product owners, our resource managers, and then our portfolio managers. This is not necessarily a role within your organization. If you are more in that decentralized, you may wear multiple hats here, right? So keep that in mind that these are the personas, not necessarily people in your organization. They may be, but essentially we're looking at I'm planning, I am responsible for goals and managing and understanding the impact of staffing when I'm requesting, right? I need insight, but I'm not necessarily the owner of that. That's what your work owner is. Your resource manager facilitating the staffing, if you will, and ensuring that the teams are properly staffed based on their attributes, and we're making strategic decisions as well. We need to make sure that we are shifting appropriately, aligning to those priorities, and staffing appropriately, like I said, right time, right place. And then your portfolio manager is really about what is the impact, what are the trade-offs for staffing in a certain way for the initiatives that I'm responsible for underneath my portfolio. Okay. Digging down into that work owner, we're looking at the resource assignment per item owner. So we have our demands. These are really your, excuse me, in living in the classic form or strategic planning as a planning item. Coming soon, demand in workspaces in the next experience as well. Just a little plug for that. But I'm really just looking for a high level. I kind of know who or the type of people that I want for the right amount of time, or I only know a few of them, right? That's where your demand would be coming in. The project, you're refining it a bit more. Maybe I'm getting down to the more granular level of tasks, right? I have phases that I need people staffed at, and rather than just across the entire project, I can manage them here more effectively. I'm asking the resource managers for the right people to fulfill these things. And then from an Epic perspective, that is more about that larger piece of the agile puzzle. I'm not staffing down to the most granularity, but I know that for this epic, which spans maybe a quarter, I need to have somebody or some people assigned to this to make sure that we're executing it appropriately. And finally,
Oh, epic.
yeah, no, I got that. Um, the labor costs against resource assignments, right? We do have a deeper dive into this, so this is just high level, but there's two ways to generate our labor costs. There's a generate labor cost when you're in the new world and are using resource assignments. This will generate the cost. And the reason to doing this rather than the classic way of just automatically generating the cost is to give the ability for adjustments and getting the kind of end closer to the end state before actually associating costs with that. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be updated after. So if things change, you want to make sure that you are regenerating that. There's also a scheduled job that can be set to just automatically generate those costs on a periodic basis as well. Finally, about the costs, we're going to talk about rate models, and that's variations, because we have groups defined, they can have a cost associated. A role could have a cost associated. A user may be even able to have a cost associated with it. But when we have different flavors of what makes it this particular rate, that's where we'll look at just kind of a simple diagram where when we're, Mark, if you go to the next slide. We're going to check the rate model table. And we set up user so you can break down. We're going to go into this far more detail. I know I'm a broken record there, but if you don't get the in-depth concepts of this, hopefully this provides a high level for you. But essentially, we're going to check, are there any user labor rates? Are there any group labor rates based on certain parameters? If no, then just use that default rate, right? The rate model, I'm sorry, the rate model can be changed and configured throughout. It's just historical data will stay the same, right? So just note that. Thanks, Mark. Go ahead. Finally, we're looking at capacity planning. This is really all about supply and demand, right? We have to figure out what the supply of resources are, what relevant attributes the workforce has, and the availability for that. Then we figure out demand by estimating, and complete the work has been planned then. So once you have those two sides of the story, I can compare. I've got two. I can plan the work. I can adjust it based on priorities and things like that. But I can't do any of that if I don't have that starting point of capacity. And that's, again, reiterating those primary attributes where that comes in very, very heavily. And this is just a quick little overview on the next slide of what it looks like. So a teaser for our upcoming capacity planning workshop. This is what it looks like within strategic planning workspace, seeing by team, by group, by role, what they're assigned to, how many people they have, really shows just a widespread spectrum of use cases. I can determine if I need more people. I can determine if I need to supplement or things like that. And then as I shift things, I can see where I'm freeing up or continuing to over allocate. Those are just really the concept we wanted to go through to set you foundation and an anchor point for the rest of this presentation. And then obviously it anchors to the next sessions as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark. We're going to talk about the Resource Management Workspace and give you a little preview of the things that can be done within there.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah. So gives you an overview and a foundation. As he said, we're going to drill in over our next 4 sessions. Um, Starting from the top, as you come into Resource Management Workspace, we have a set of dashboards, and those that maybe have worked with it over the past couple of years as Resource Management Workspace has been evolving, we didn't have dashboards. So this is fairly new, came out February this year. And so what we're giving you is a single pane view of what's going on as you come in here in the resource manager persona, but you could be maybe a portfolio owner. There's really different personas, but the key one is the resource manager. I want to know what's going on. And it could be by group, by role, by group and role, by skill, any of your planning attributes and the date and time. We'll drill in and look a little more detail, but we've got a lot of, this gives you that snapshot view that you can get more from the, that gives you more information and helps guide you on what you're going to do. So drilling into the dashboard, we have resources over allocated, resources underutilized, upcoming pending assignments. This is telling me what I need to do. So I'm filtered here by, I could filter by group, I could filter, and in this case, we're filtering by analysts and architects, a couple of groups. So imagine that I'm the manager for it. Now I see I've got one person over allocated, I've got resources that are underutilized. I can set my time range. Now I see a good overview of what's happening with these two groups that I'm responsible for. I see the upcoming pending assignments. I see informations on assignments ending, coming up, utilization percentages. This is a great view where I can see and understand my allocation, where I have work allocated, but it also is compared to my total capacity. This tells me right here, hey, I'm way underutilized. I need to put these people to work. So in this view, and then finally, I see breakdowns by the work type. So one of the things that it's not really set up in this demo is I have different work types. I have planned work, I have unplanned work. I can understand where that is. And then finally, I see allocation by role. This overview dashboard is given me just in a time frame. I also have a more detailed, a lot of, especially in the highly centralized, they're going to control by week. So this shifts that focus to a week by week type effort basis. And X. So you've got a dashboard. It's told you what to do. You've got an understanding what's going on with your team, with your roles, whatever, however you're managing your resources. The resource management workspace is a tool. You need to pick a set of resources to work with. So much like the old allocation workbench and other facilities, and also if you're familiar with Project Workspace, we have these cards. They're essentially a filter. Now I can pick a set of resources by their membership in a role, in a group, a skill set, or any combination thereof, including those custom attributes. Say you had location. I can define these cards to basically act as my filter for what resources I'm going to work with. And I would create a set of cards for me, at least one, but I might have 5 or 6. It just depends upon how I'm managing. I create I give it a name. This filter by, this is critical. I can filter by their group, their skill, their role, but I may also filter by the project or program or portfolio that's part of. So I have different ways to slice and dice those resources. I give it a time frame. for the resource assignments I'm going to look at. And then I define the filter. So if I pick resource, I'm looking for things like primary resource group, and in this case, we're demonstrating with the analysts and the architects group. But it could have been a role. These might be two roles. So primary role is analyst. Primary role is architect. Again, I'm working with roles. This just happens to be groups in this demonstration here. If I'm looking at project or at the work type, then I might pick a particular set of demands or a set of demands under a program or a set of demands underneath a portfolio. All of that's accessible. We use dot walking to get to the elements. And once you save the card, it takes you to the resource board. Here's where you start to work with it. So, little demonstration. What we're going to do here is we're going to go out and we're going to create a new card. Imagine I'm the manager of that analyst and architects group. So I'm going to create a new resource card. And video is going a little slow. Sorry about that. So here, as we mentioned, we give it a name. So because my demo scenario is I'm going to do analysts and architects. I call it analysts and architects. I pick resource in the filter by because I'm not looking at project here. I'm looking at the resource type. I want it to be for all of 2025. So I go Jan 1 and then December 31st. I can put a description on it if it helps. And then next I go to the filter. By default, you're going to have users active. That's good. You don't want people that have been disabled in the system. They've been removed. Probably somebody retired or left the company. From here now, I am going to build up my filter. And in this case, as we mentioned, those attributes, this is where those primary attributes come into play. So here I'm going to pick primary resource groups, but I have essentially anything on the user record and the user profile record. User profile is where the group is going to come from. And here I'm going to pick the analysts or architects. So this gives me my filter. I can save this filter so that other people can use it. So I'll save it as analysts and architects, and I'll set permissions for everyone so others can come in and get it. The cards are personalized to me. These are my cards, my filters. But now somebody can use the same filter and basically get the same kind of use. So this is the way that we share these cards or filters. And once we click into it, here's our resource board. We see all of the resources in place that I'm going to be working with. And I can start to manage them. And that will be our next section. And the resource planning. So you picked your resources, we come into the resource planning board. By default, all of our resources are shown here. You see that we see information from our filter there. So this is the card that we created. Here's that timeline that we're looking at. On the left-hand side, we see the resources and the details of those resource assignments. So everything's grouped. A single person might have several resource assignments. So as you expand the person, you're going to see their resource assignments. It's a grouping mechanism. Excuse me. Effectively, what we're doing is we're showing each resource assignment has a row in this grid. On the right-hand side, we see the hours that were requested. So when you make a request across a period of time, Those hours are broken up. If you're working in FTE or person days, it would show FTE and person days. And you see up here, you can pick that, whether you're working in hours, FTE, person days. You can pick how you're viewing the time, monthly or weekly. So if you want to get really detailed and manage on a weekly basis, you can do so. And you can group by. So, um, in each row, you have several capabilities. You can edit the row. In other words, you can go in there and edit those times. You can open the resource assignment record. There's some additional attributes such as notes and a ready for review flag that the project manager can set, telling you it's ready for review. I can reassign this resource assignment. I can split it, in which case you would take the whole resource assignment across a period of time, pick a point somewhere, maybe in the middle or wherever, and you split it. It'll create two resource assignments split at the date that you pick. And then you could reassign that second half that lets you split it up. Maybe somebody's going on vacation, you take a chunk out and reassign that chunk. So there's various things that split can be used to do. You can unassign it, put it back in the backlog of resource assignments that are for my group, but they have nobody placed. So if I'm doing that centralized resource management, I can say, you know what, Aileen here is way overbooked. I'm going to unassign and reassign somewhere else. Of course, I probably might just use reassign. It's just a different way of doing it. And then finally, I can extend a resource assignment. The more time project manager communicates, I can give them more time. Grouping. So this is a really powerful feature that's coming in this year is I can group by various things. I can group by my primary group, primary role and skill. Those are our key attributes by the owner of the project. So if I have a particular uh, project owner, I want to look at all of their resource assignments. It's got a bunch of resources. I can just look at it from that project level. I can group it. Maybe I got several projects under that particular owner. Or parent item. Parent item is the demand, project, epic, or other task type that's been configured to do resource assignment. Or I can just have a flat list like we were looking at it a moment ago. When I have it grouped, I get this overview. I see it's green, or if the group as a whole is overbooked, it's going to turn red for me. And I can look at this allocations modal and understand what's been assigned. So for analysts in the month of June, they have 15 hours approved, and the remaining is 1569. But also between approved and pending, there's 398 hours, which put us up about 25%. So that says, okay, I might go approve the pending. I'm looking for good utilization, right? And so then finally, I have approved, pending, and unapproved. I might roll some back. We see here that there's 8 hours that were unapproved. I could maybe roll them back in because I do have the capacity to do it. It just lets me understand what's going on with that group. Again, I can become and understand at my group level, not just the individual. And then finally, the resource planning board, if I'm looking at the time, this grouping at the person level. So for Aileen, I see this modal, I see it's broken up by the different approval statuses, and I see the utilization percentages. Approved is next to nothing. She's completely unassigned or underutilized based on what's approved. There is some pending that's quite massive. It's going to put her at 166%. I'm probably going to need to adjust that. And then I see there's also some out there, that 8 hours that's not approved. I understand what's happening with Aileen as a resource overall, and I can manage from that. It's much easier than trying to look at it line item by line item. So resource assignment status and utilization drivers. We talk about this right now because one of the things early on as we were evolving this functionality, everything, no matter whether it was unassigned, approved, pending, unapproved, it all counted against your capacity. We just took it away. But what we saw, and in the previous slide, what we were looking at, the only thing that counts against your capacity is something this or based on the configuration I had in this demo system, only approved matter. Pending was not counted. Unapproved, those are, unapproved, obviously that's out. We're not going to count that against her capacity utilization. We're not going to count pending because we haven't decided to approve it yet. So based on the status, we can control how that behaves. Some companies, the just kind of individual type processes, they don't care about the status they assign. It takes away. So it can be very simple or it can be better controlled. That's the point of being able to configure the utilization drivers. And then, here we see it starts off. This is pre-configuration to control what matters. So out of the box, no utilization drivers. Aileen has 3 resource assignments, one approved, one pending, one approved. Overall, she would be pretty much overbooked, but no matter what it is, everything counts. So in the month of June, she's at 288 hours and looks pretty booked up there, but we're ignoring the status here. So what happens is we do the configuration to say, don't count pending, don't count unapproved, and see what we get. This is a more realistic picture of what's going on with Aileen. In the month of June, she only has 15 hours because I haven't done anything as a resource manager with this really big project, this continuous integration project. So now I can work on this, I can divide it up, I can make sure that things are balanced. And that's the point of it. So here is a demonstration on the board. Now that we've created our Resource Management Workspace card, we click on it and it takes us to the board. Here we see all the resources that were selected by the query that we put into the card. We see the card here. We can edit its contents, the dates, the filter, and here we can refresh the data. This shows us the timeline, and a general status of the board shows that we have some pending resource assignments that need to be addressed and approved or unapproved or adjusted. Over here, we can adjust the timeline view or the time view to be hours, FTE, or person days, depending upon how you need to work. You can adjust monthly or weekly views, depending upon how detailed you need to be. You can create a new resource assignment or an operational assignment for operational work like change, an incident, problem, unplanned kind of work. You can export the board to comma separated or Excel. And of course, you can delete the board or the card. That's the card that you created. And very powerful, you can group these resource assignments by various things. For example, we've made this particular board to the analyst and architect group. So I can group by the group and see my analyst group, my architect group. I can manage them both here in one place. I can group by role, by skill. Owner of the task, the project, the demand that's requesting the resource, the item itself, the project or the task or epic, or no grouping at all. So you can use these depending upon how you work. If you work by role, you might do a breakdown by role. Just depends upon how you want to see it. When grouped, you get a summary view of what's going on. Here we see the total capacity for this group for this month of March is 1656. I see I have 18 hours approved. I see that I have 82 hours approved and unassigned, and I have total approved, unassigned, and pending 110 hours. And that gives me an idea of utilization and requests that are out there. So I know what I'm looking at and working with for this particular month for this group. When we expand the group, we see the individual resources. And each resource, if we open it up, we see their resource assignments. Here we have a mix of approved, pending, and unapproved. And you see approved, and the same as we saw with the group, I see a breakdown in approval statuses and how it lines up for utilization. So with the approved and pending, I'm at near perfect utilization. So I might want to go ahead and approve this, given other various constraints. Here, I can adjust what I see over here in the right-hand side. The right-hand side shows us information about the resource assignment. What is the project or demand? What type of thing is it? Demand, or project task, who owns it, how many hours. So all of the information about the resource assignment. And I can add or remove columns as I need them. When we look at unassigned work in the next part of this or the next section, we'll be able to adjust what we see in unassigned work. We're going to look at that in a moment. And then finally, I can activate actuals. So if we use timesheets, I can actually go in and see where we have timesheet entries. Here, Aileen has an approved resource assignment on 180-360 feedback. And in the month of May, she committed 23 hours to that project. So the estimates were 35. We put in 23. We can understand what was actually done. On each row, I have the ability to edit the row. So future dates, notice that May is grayed out because we passed May, but I can go in here and make adjustments. I have actuals. That's what's locking it out. I have actuals here where I could make adjustments on a per month basis. If I change it to weeks, I can make it on a weekly basis. How many hours do I expect Aileen to go and work? So as resource manager, I can be very detailed on the requirements. Perhaps it'd be the project manager that would communicate some information on what we need to do. For a non-approved yet, a pending, I might make some adjustments here to better balance the work for Aileen, given the other things that are going on. And then here it shows an unapproved. The unapproved doesn't count against Aileen's availability, but it is shown here for completeness. We might approve this. We might reassign it and approve it. There's many different ways that these might be handled. If need be, you could open the resource assignment itself. This has some advantages in that you see further details on the resource assignment. See the assignment, who, the roles, the approval status. Is it ready for review? This is something you could use in your process for the requester to say, yes, it's ready for review. That will be a flag for our resource manager to go look at them. In fact, you might even filter this in your card. You can create notes for collaboration. Here's the allocation record. If this is a parent resource, like a group resource where you would have children, you can see the children. And here we see the time cards. We noted that we had some time against this. Here's the time cards. So we can see the details of this resource and its actuals. Going back, we can take other actions. I can reassign. So if I want somebody else to take this, they can. If I want I can split the assignment. So looking at this one, continuous integration, this is a pretty big task. In fact, in some cases, if I approve it, it's probably going to put Aileen over on her. See, if I approve this, she's going to go over her utilization, 167. That's pretty high. So I might want to do something about that. So one thing that I have available is I can go and I can split the assignment. I can say, okay, somewhere about September, middle of September, I'm going to split this assignment. So if I split, they're both assigned. But what I've done is essentially created two assignments. So one of the things that I have to look at is now I could take this other half and I could assign to somebody on the team. So if I do a reassign, I can go and look for somebody. Notice that I'm not able to pick up anybody. So why might that be? If we go back and we re-enable role and skill, and I look at this assignment, so this second assignment here that I want to reassign, I notice it's looking for not only analyst and test engineer. And this may be exactly what I desire, is I need a test engineer from the analysts. But perhaps I'm not that detailed. I just need somebody from the analyst group, and that would be good enough. So what I can do, open the resource assignment, I removed the requirement for the role because I really did need that. It was actually auto added when we created the original assignment. Now I go back, I go to this. This is the second one, the one that we split out for the second half of the overall. And I go in here and reassign. Now, if I go to pick somebody like Tom or Tony P, let's put Tony on this. And there we go. We've now moved half that work off Aileen into Tony's queue. And now Tony has got some work. I can approve it. If I approve it, there we go. Other activities actions that I can take. We've seen split. If I just want to get something, I'll put it back in our backlog of unassigned work to be dealt with. I can unassign it. And then finally, if somebody needs more time, the project's getting extended, I can extend the work. So that's going to give me the new end date and how many hours. So, and it'll readjust the hours that are already done, that'll be long. But the hours that are ahead of us, it's going to readjust it by the hours that I add. And that is our resource management board. Now that we've created our resource management. All right. Thanks for that. There's a lot there. As you can see, it's a pretty powerful tool to manage, manipulate, work with your resources. You can slice, you can dice. I saw a question coming through. If I need more details, if I want to drill down, you can adjust that filter. Remember, you can save your filter. You can go to the card, save the filter, create a new filter. It's a little more detailed, work with it, and then you could flip back and forth. You could create a new card based off the more detailed filter. So there's a lot of options there that are not readily apparent. You can't right click and show matching or some of those kinds of things, but you do have the ability to get more detail. So now we want to talk about another really important part. When doing something like demand, you don't know necessarily who you want. You just know I need an architect. I need an analyst. So the unassigned tasks tray at the bottom resource management workspace, it's enabled by the toggle, unassigned task toggle, and it turns on this bottom section. The filter is separate from the card. You have to go adjust the filter. And so using that new filter. So for example, I'm working in a board that has analysts and architects. But if I did a search for analysts and architects at the same time, yeah, I could end up kind of having some weird behaviors. I might be trying to assign an architect to an analyst job or something of that sort. So I can filter to just the analysts, just the architects. I can work with them, get my job done. So the filter gives me those tasks, those resource assignments that are sitting out there for the group. In this case, could be role, could be skill, however things are sliced and diced. When you do the filter, you see you're going to pick and you're looking at resource assignments. So the filter that you're building here is on resource assignments. So the group is architects, the role is test manager, something of that sort. Then once you have your list of unassigned, I have several options. I can edit the role. So I can make some adjustments to that resource assignment in the hour allocated on a monthly or weekly basis, depending upon how we're looking at the timelines. I can make adjustments there. I can open the assignment. I can go to the resource assignment record, just like we were looking at on the board. I can assign the work and I can extend it. So when assigning the work, I can assign in one go, I can assign to multiple people. I get a drop down based off my filtering criteria of who I'm looking at, who's available, and I can pick one more. This does have a limit on the number of people it will show. So you might have to be a little more detailed on your filter to get this to work, but it does let you pick up to, I think, 10 people. And so a little demonstration of now that we know how to work with our resource board, we can start to look for unassigned tasks, unassigned resource assignments, that is, that we can assign to our teams. To do so, I open the unassigned tasks tray at the bottom of the screen by clicking the toggle. Next, I have to create a filter to find a set of tasks. I can use just about any criteria, but it has to match the resources that I'm working with up here. So if you're filtered by role or by group, you're going to want to use the same roles and groups or combinations thereof, and perhaps other notions to go find the task that you're looking for. Here, I've been working with the analysts and architects group. So I'm going to look for some tasks for the architects. So I go and pick the group. The group is architect. I choose it. I'm not adding any other criteria, although I could. And I filter. I see I'm picking up 3 unassigned resource requests for 3 different tasks. The facilities and constructions project, or it's actually a demand. A phase 3 from the automated software deployment, and then the initiating phase in 180 and 360 feedback. Again, a project task. And we see we have 1,100 hours, quite a bit over here in this demand, but these tasks, 200, 300 hours. And we see how they break down. So now that I have my unassigned tasks, and remember from up here, if I unassign something, it would fall down in here. I'm going to assign this task. In the unassigned tasks, I could change the allocation of hours. Maybe I want to rearrange it. Maybe they ask, there's a request from the person requesting the resource, say front loaded. I need more time up front. So I can make adjustments as I'm starting before I even assign this. I can also go to the assignment itself, just like you can up top. I could go work with the assignment, or the thing we're really here for is to assign work. I can extend it, by the way, as well. But here, I want to assign this. So I need to pick somebody from my architects group. So Here's Davis. I can add Davis. I can also add Eric. You'll see as I start to type, I'm going to get a list of most everybody that's in the group that I can pick from. It'll show roughly up to 10, depending upon what you've typed. It's doing a type ahead here. And let's see, I'll go ahead and put some on James. So now the hours requested here, 300 hours, are going to get split across these three resources. And now we see Davis has his phase three, James has his phase three, and Roselia has phase three, and actually has two of them. So maybe I might move this one around, but that's a decision that we can make. We can see that when he divvied up the hours, it had two left over. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and assign those to Eddie. And now it's completed sending out all of the assignments. That's how we do unassigned task and task assignment with Resource Management Workspace. Now that we know how to work. All right, so that covers our discussion of the Resource Management Workspace, various facilities. We saw dashboards for overall understanding, planning, knowing what to do. We know how to select our resources using the cards. We've seen how the board works, how you manage those resources. And then finally, we saw how to assign it. Um, Josh is going to jump in here and show us end to end from the project all the way through how you can work with those resources. Josh, I will stop sharing and let you take over, my friend.
Sounds good. Here we go. We're going to walk through those kind of three scenarios or three methodologies. So scenario one, we're going to walk through the centralized model. Scenario two, we're going to do looking at more of a hybrid model. And then finally in scenario three, it's going to be a decentralized model. What I'm doing is I'm actually taking a few of these use cases and combining them to a similar team. So I have a team that is centralized, but they also produce for that hybrid. Starting off, we're going to look at that centralized model. Project manager requests an attribute, and then the resource manager fulfills that. As Paul Martin, our project manager, I'm going to go into this 180 and 360 feedback project. Oops. And I can see based on the top, so this is the summary task. So the project itself, this is where I have my resource assignments set. You can do it at phase level as well, different tasks and things like that. But we're going to kind of just keep it here for now. And you can see that as the project manager, I'm already assigned. I have a half-time FTE as mine, and I'm approved. But I, as a project manager, need to request some things. So we're going to look at that centralized model first, where I'm just requesting for the IT HR solutions group the role of architect and quality analyst. What I'm doing here is I'm using this ready for review capability to signal to the resource manager that these are ready for review. So I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. And yes, right? So I've got the right group and the role that I need from that group. And now I've set it. I can see that the resource status of these both are unassigned. So let's move over to our resource manager now. ITHR Solutions. As the dude, I am the resource manager for all of ITHR Solutions. And I can see that I have two that are unassigned and ready for review. That's straight from the resource card, but I also want to show the fact that on the resource assignment, or sorry, resource management reporting dashboard, I can see that I have two assignments ready for review. So I can either click into that or I can go from my card. So why don't we just do it based on the actual data visualization. And the filter didn't set, so that's great. We're going to go back to my card. We're going to say, okay, I've got two ready for review. Paul Martin is the one requesting these. I'm going to look, but the greatest thing is I see architect, and I've got this group by feature, so I can group by my primary role, which gives me the roll up, and I can look at my architects, and I can see actually for this year, they have no time allocated to them. So they have full capacity, full availability available. So anyone that I pick, they can fulfill that 0.2 FTE, assign the work. And I'm going to give Anna that. Go ahead and assign that. Perfect. Now that I see that Anna is assigned, pending, I can go ahead and approve that. So now let's go ahead and assign the other one too that's being requested. Byron. See that it fits well within Byron's time, and I'm going to approve that as well. Excellent. So now as the project manager, Paul, I can come back here and just give my project workspace view a little refresh, and I can see that ready for review flag got reset to no, assigned resources, and they are approved. Perfect. So the final assignment is available in both locations and seamless effort. The next scenario we have is the hybrid model. So similar to the centralized model, but in hybrid, I'm actually going to request a named resource. So as the project manager, Paul Martin, I need an HR process team member who is a business relationship manager. And you know what? I know who I want for this. I want Robin. I'm going to go ahead and select Robin. This will change to pending. And I'm going to then again, as a project manager or resource requester, I'm going to set it for ready for review to flag my resource manager. And as the dude, I'm also the HR process team manager, resource manager. I'm going to take a look. Make sure that this is appropriate. Yes, it is. Oh, I'm sorry. It is no longer unassigned. It is pending for Robin. I'm going to take a look. I have some operational assignments for all of my users, right? To protect 20% of their time. And I can see that this does not conflict, given the duration, still less than 0.5%. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to approve this. I can see that this ready for review, right, is open. Once it's approved, there we go. And Paul Martin should now have a fully staffed project. We're just going to reset this to no. And there we go. So that takes care of our hybrid model where Paul requested Robin specifically based on the initial group and role and was fulfilled by the resource manager. Finally, I, as a resource manager, am also looking to staff a project. So as Du Lebowski, I have a project that I need to do for with my team. So we're talking about now that decentralized model where the project manager independently assigns and approves the resources. So I've created HR process improvements project, and I've got a plan. And at the moment, I have no resource assignments. And quite frankly, I don't want to have to do individual resource assignments. I need my whole group to be a part of this. So within the details of Project Workspace, I move to Resource Assignments tab, and I'm going to create a new one. And rather than the assignment type of user, I'm actually going to create a group assignment. For my HR process team, FTE, what this would do is actually puts one FTE by default for each member of the team. I don't want them assigned that much. I want 25% of them. So 25% of 8 would be 2. I want it for the duration of the planned project. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we can see resource assignments will be created to all group members of this group because they are primary. I, as the resource manager, can also see, and the project manager this time, I'm wearing both hats, can see that I have 8 resource assignments, we call child resource assignments, for the parent group resource assignment. They're all in pending right now. I don't care about the ready for review because they're my people. I can see I gave them 25% of full-time equivalent, and I'm not going to individually approve them. I'm going to go ahead and just approve all of them. By manipulating the group assignment or the parent, this will actually allow me to take care of the children assignments as well. So as a department head or team lead, I'm responsible for resource them as well. I can see that the project that I just allocated my folks to, I'm still not over allocating them. And I've got all my team members assigned there because I'm responsible for them. I don't need to ask permission. As long as I'm looking at things, I'm good. So quick comparison, centralized, assigned by resource manager, approved by resource manager. Our hybrid, we have project manager is asking for that named, so technically assigned, and then it's approved by the resource manager. And our decentralized is project manager assigns and approves.
Here's a set of resources for you that you can use. ServiceNow University, we have resource management extras, SPM fundamentals, SPM implementer. If you really want to get deep, these are valuable for everything in strategic portfolio. And then resource management migration to the next level. In the community, check this strategic portfolio management forum hub. There's quick start guides. There is literally a quick start for resource management that has pointers to everything, including a ton of YouTube playlists. So this gives you a lot to work with, a lot of guidance. And just as a final plug here, we have customer success, ServiceNow Impact. If you have Impact, they are there to help you. If they don't have the answers, they can pull in SMEs like myself and Josh. Training and certification, ServiceNow University. We have great help up there. And of course, our own expert services. If you need somebody to help you implement or optimize, our expert services can be there for you, as well as a thousands of partners that are out there to help with your implementation. And then finally, don't forget, next month on the 15th, we're going to take up the subject again. Some of it, yes, is going to be a repeat. We're going to go back through the concepts and get deeper on that process. A lot of what Josh was just demonstrating, we're going to talk deeper on it. So please join us. And we really appreciate your patience and participation today. And thank you for coming out and joining us.